The purpose of these segments is to give you information that you can use in solving the problems that are out there in our country. Now, one of the things I'd like you to do this week is to go out and buy Time magazine. Now, in that magazine is this article, The Secret History of the Shadow Campaign That Saved the 2020 Election. Now, it's not on the current stands right now, but it will be soon. And make sure that article's in it before you purchase it. Next week, I'll tell you what to do with it. Now, I'm sure that you have been all aware, to some extent, of the censorship by such social media as Facebook. Those of us who are engaged professionally in utilizing social media see it far more than the general public. The public pressure on the media giants has caused them to establish boards to oversee whether their censorship is warranted. With Facebook, they have established their Oversight Board, supposedly somewhat independent arbiter of complaints about Facebook's censor of content and deletion of posts, even banning the use by some individuals and groups. The board doesn't rely on our Bill of Rights. Instead, it uses international codes established by the United Nations, such as the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Our Declaration of Independence declares that our rights come from our Creator, God. There is no such determination by the United Nations. Under their system, our rights come from government. Using the United Nations International Covenant is a very dangerous proposition when it comes to protecting the rights of the people. Just one example of this is the difference between the American Bill of Rights and the United Nations International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which supposedly are the same thing, but they're not. The Bill of Rights states, Amendment 1, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Congress shall make no law, period. This also implies that government cannot limit these rights in case of an emergency. Once that process starts, it's a very slippery slope. In contrast, the UN International Covenant, Article 18, states, everyone shall have the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. It goes on to state, freedom to manifest one's religion or beliefs may be subject only to such limitations as are prescribed by law. This is very different from the idea that government cannot pass a law as stated in the Bill of Rights. In other words, according to the UN, you have the right to freedom of religion as long as some government doesn't pass a law against it. Again, in Article 19 of the UN Covenant, everyone shall have the right to hold opinions without interference. Then it states, the exercise of the rights provided in this article carries with it special duties and responsibilities. It may, therefore, be subject to certain restrictions, but these shall only be such as provided by law and are necessary. Again, very different from the spirit of the Bill of Rights, where government cannot regulate opinions and speech. There are other restrictions as well. What we see here is the exact opposite of freedom as expressed in the Bill of Rights versus the UN idea of freedom. There are two things that come forth out of the Facebook Oversight Board. One, they're using agreements that do not rise to the level of our Bill of Rights when it comes to liberty. Two, they are using the United Nations as their guide, not American liberty, even though they are ostensibly in an American company. This further demonstrates the fact that the leader of Facebook is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, and Facebook is a corporate member of the CFR. The CFR's mission is to convince and work for the United States to become only a cog in the wheel of a one-world government. So even if the Facebook Oversight Board poses as an arbiter, They follow the international standards, not American standards of free speech. To better understand the differences between the United Nations and the United States, get my book, The United Nations, Unity Through Tyranny, How the UN Agenda Threatens Everything You Hold Dear. It is an easy read and a book you can readily pass on to a friend. Spread the word by forwarding this video to all so they may better understand the problems with social media. And for further information on Facebook and Google and all the rest of them, get this book we recommended last week, In the Shadows of the Deep State. It shows the organizations that these Facebook leaders belong to and what their motivation is. Until next week, good hunting.